If you could ask nature for one superpower, immortality would probably be near the top of the list. For as long as humans have existed, we've told stories about magical fountains, mysterious elixirs, and secret ways to avoid growing old. Entire legends have been built around the idea of escaping time, yet every living thing we know eventually ages, declines, and dies. Well, almost every living thing. Hidden in the world's oceans is a tiny creature that has developed one of the strangest survival strategies ever discovered. It doesn't live forever in the way most people imagine, and it certainly isn't invincible, but it can do something that seems almost impossible. When faced with stress, injury, or difficult conditions, it can reverse its own life cycle and become young again. Meet the immortal jellyfish. Despite its dramatic name, the immortal jellyfish isn't a giant sea monster lurking in the depths of the ocean. In fact, it's surprisingly small. Most individuals are only a few millimeters across, which means you could easily overlook one even if it were floating right in front of you. The species is called Turritopsis dohrnii, and it belongs to a group of animals known as hydrozoans, which are close relatives of jellyfish. Like many of its relatives, it spends much of its life drifting through the water, carried along by currents while feeding on tiny organisms. At first glance, there isn't much about it that stands out. It's transparent, delicate, and so small that it hardly looks like a creature capable of rewriting what we know about aging. If you were shown a photograph without any context, you might assume it was just another ordinary jellyfish. That assumption would be completely understandable. For centuries, nobody had any reason to suspect this tiny animal possessed one of the most unusual biological abilities ever recorded. To understand why it's so special, we first need to look at how most jellyfish live. Many jellyfish begin life as tiny larvae before settling onto a surface and developing into a structure known as a polyp. The polyp is attached to the seafloor and resembles a tiny underwater stalk. Eventually, that stage produces the familiar free-swimming jellyfish form, known as a medusa, which drifts through the ocean and reproduces. For most jellyfish, that journey moves in one direction. Young becomes adult. Adult reproduces. Life ends. The immortal jellyfish looked at that process and apparently decided it wasn't entirely satisfied with the arrangement. Instead of continuing forward under certain conditions, it can do something extraordinary. It can go backwards. Imagine if a butterfly could transform back into a caterpillar whenever life became difficult. It sounds absurd because we're used to thinking of growth as a one-way street, yet that's surprisingly close to what happens here. When an immortal jellyfish experiences severe stress, starvation, physical damage, or environmental challenges, it can begin a process known as transdifferentiation. While the word sounds complicated, the basic idea is remarkably simple. Its cells start changing roles. Cells that were once part of an adult jellyfish can transform into entirely different kinds of cells, allowing the animal to reorganize itself into an earlier stage of its life cycle. Instead of remaining an adult, it essentially presses a biological reset button. The medusa shrinks. Its body changes. Eventually, it returns to the polyp stage. From there, it can begin developing again. In theory, this process can happen repeatedly, which means the animal avoids the normal progression toward old age that most living things experience. This discovery stunned scientists because it challenged one of the most fundamental assumptions in biology. We tend to think of life as a straight line moving from birth to death, but the immortal jellyfish revealed that nature can occasionally take a far stranger route. Now, before anyone starts planning a future where humans live forever, there are some important details to understand. The immortal jellyfish is not truly immortal. Its name is catchy, but it can be misleading. Plenty of things can still kill it. Fish eat them. Diseases affect them. Environmental changes can harm them. A jellyfish that gets eaten is not going to regenerate its way out of a fish's stomach. What makes the species remarkable is not that it cannot die, but that it has found a way to avoid dying from aging in the usual sense. That's still an astonishing achievement. Most animals experience aging as a one-way process. Over time, damage accumulates, systems become less efficient, and eventually the body can no longer function properly. The immortal jellyfish has evolved a way to sidestep that process by returning to an earlier stage of life before age becomes the deciding factor. Scientists are naturally fascinated by this ability because aging remains one of the great mysteries of biology. Researchers study the immortal jellyfish not because they expect humans to start transforming into younger versions of themselves, but because understanding how cells change and repair themselves could reveal important clues about development, regeneration, and disease. In other words, this tiny drifting creature may help us better understand some of the most complex questions in medicine. What's especially charming about the immortal jellyfish is how ordinary it appears despite possessing such an extraordinary ability. If nature were designing a creature capable of reversing age, you might expect something majestic. Perhaps a glowing deep-sea giant or a mysterious animal hidden in a remote corner of the world. Instead, the honor belongs to a nearly transparent jellyfish that most people would never notice. That's often how nature works. The most astonishing discoveries aren't always attached to the biggest animals or the most dramatic landscapes. Sometimes they're hiding inside creatures so small that they can drift through an entire ocean almost unnoticed. The immortal jellyfish won't grant eternal life. It won't reveal the secret to living forever. What it does offer is something arguably more interesting, proof that nature is capable of solutions far stranger than anything humans have imagined. After all, when most animals encounter the passage of time, they continue moving forward. The immortal jellyfish found a way to turn around and go back.